Linda Reed, a young woman employed at a prestigious jewelry store, mysteriously vanished during her lunch break, leaving behind a trail of perplexing clues and bewildered witnesses. Decades passed before the truth behind her disappearance was finally unveiled, much to the astonishment of the investigators. Born in the opulent Australian city of Gold Coast in 1962, Linda was raised in a warm and affectionate family, exuding a vibrant and lively persona that attracted many friends. During her school days, she crossed paths with a young man named Robert, with whom she eventually tied the knot at the tender age of 19. Together, they harbored dreams of establishing a large, harmonious family and constructing their dream abode. Without further delay, the newlyweds embark on this journey, purchasing a plot of land and diligently setting aside a substantial portion of their earnings for the construction project. Opting to forego renting a place, they resided in a trailer nestled in Robert's parents' backyard, all in the pursuit of expediting the completion of their dream home. Linda secured a position as a salesperson at a renowned jewelry store situated within a bustling shopping complex, instantly taking a liking to her job and forging strong bonds with her colleagues. The generous income she earned facilitated her savings for their envisioned home. The month of December in 1983 was particularly hectic, with the store abuzz with holiday fervor. Linda, then 21 years old, toiled tirelessly throughout her shift, only managing to break for lunch at noon. It was on December 13th that the unexpected occurred. Linda failed to return from her break at the usual time. This was not normal from her. She always punctual. Her absence throughout the remainder of the workday left her co-workers in a state of bewilderment and concern. The workday continued, and Linda was still nowhere to be seen. It seemed like she had left her shift abruptly, but her colleagues were hesitant to believe that she would do such a thing, given her strong sense of responsibility. Her absence also puzzled her husband, who waited for her at home before reaching out to her co-workers. They informed him that Linda had not returned from her break, causing Robert to grow increasingly worried. He searched for her in the shopping center and other places she frequented, but she was nowhere to be found. As time passed, his concern deepened, prompting him to contact the police by 7 p.m. However, he was informed that a missing person report could only be filed after 24 hours. Linda's mother faced the same response when she tried to reach out. The family had no choice but to wait until the next day for the report to be accepted. The police investigation revealed that Linda had gone shopping for New Year's gifts and visited her bank during her break. The security guard at the shopping center was the last person to see her leaving in her car. Despite efforts to locate her, there were no further leads. Linda's loved ones were left wondering why she had left work unexpectedly and where she could have gone. The police issued alerts for her and her vehicle while also keeping an eye on Robert, although he had a solid alibi, contrary to the usual statistics regarding spousal crimes. No other potential suspects were identified, and based on the information provided by those who knew Linda, she was not known to have any enemies and was generally regarded as a positive individual. As the investigation continued in search of new leads, several days had elapsed since Linda's disappearance. On the third day, law enforcement received a tip about an abandoned vehicle matching the description of Linda's car. The car was discovered in a suburban area 20 kilometers away from the shopping center. Upon arrival at the scene, it was confirmed that the vehicle belonged to Linda. The car was parked by the roadside near some bushes. During the 1980s, this particular area was largely undeveloped, covered with bushes and trees. Inside the car, authorities found Christmas presents that Linda had purchased before she went missing. The doors were unlocked, and the car key was left in the ignition. Notably, an empty menthol cigarette pack was found in the front passenger seat area, which was unusual as neither Linda nor Robert smoked. Investigators speculated that the pack could belong to the perpetrator. Subsequently, a thorough search for evidence was conducted, leading to a grim discovery. Approximately 40 meters away from the vehicle, in the stream bed of a small creek, Linda's lifeless body was found. Her hands were bound with a bikini and eyeglass cord, items that her family confirmed did not belong to her. Forensic analysis revealed that Linda had died from asphyxiation and had also been subjected to violence. Unfortunately, DNA evidence from the perpetrator could not be obtained at that time. Based on the evidence gathered, investigators constructed a tentative timeline of events. It was believed that an unknown assailant attacked Linda in the shopping center parking lot while she was loading her gifts into the car. The perpetrator then forced her to drive to the location where her body was discovered, where he proceeded to commit further acts of violence before ultimately taking her life. Despite extensive efforts, no concrete leads pointing to a suspect were uncovered. Subsequently, they made the decision to conduct interviews with all the patrons of the shopping center present during Linda's lunch break. Undoubtedly, this proved to be an arduous undertaking. In an effort to capture the attention of the public, law enforcement officials placed the victim's car within the shopping center, complete with a photo of the young woman and details regarding her disappearance. The hope was that this visual display would jog the memories of those who had encountered Linda that fateful day. A number of witnesses informed the authorities that they had spotted a teenager with blonde hair in the shopping center's parking lot, yet the investigators were unable to identify this individual. Other witnesses provided more intriguing information. On the day Linda went missing, they observed a man attempting to hitch a ride on the highway less than a kilometer away from where the victim's body was eventually discovered. Shortly thereafter, the driver of a van approached the police and disclosed that he had picked up a hitchhiker on that very same day at the exact location where other witnesses had seen the man. The plot thickened when the driver recounted that the hitchhiker was smoking menthol cigarettes, but he held them all in his hand without a pack. Given that an empty pack of menthol cigarettes was recovered from the victim's car, this clue became a pivotal breakthrough for the investigators. Forensic experts meticulously examined the driver's van and uncovered a fingerprint on the glass near the passenger seat that did not match the owner's prints. Regrettably, cross-referencing this fingerprint with existing databases failed to produce any leads. Furthermore, the description of the suspect provided by the driver was vague and did not aid the authorities in locating the man. No additional evidence was unearthed, causing the investigation to reach a standstill for several months. It wasn't until over a year later, in 1985, that a new lead emerged. A prisoner in one of the state's correctional facilities, who was acting as a police informant, shared a valuable tip with the investigators. His cellmate, Craig Andrew McConnell, had allegedly confessed to him about the murder of Linda Reed. Based on Craig's account, he and another individual attempted to steal a car from the shopping center's parking lot when Linda caught sight of them. Concerned that she would recognize them and alert the authorities, the perpetrators kidnapped and murdered her. Law enforcement had encountered Craig's name previously. He had been sentenced to 2 life terms for murders committed in 1984 and was a person of interest in Linda's case, although no direct link could be established at the time. Following a tip from the informant, investigators interviewed Craig in prison, where he denied any involvement in the crime. He claimed that his cellmate fabricated the story, and they never discussed the incident. Despite his assertions, authorities remained skeptical. Craig went on to commit 2 more heinous murders shortly after Linda's demise, lending credibility to the informant's narrative. While forensic analysis failed to match the suspect's fingerprints with those recovered from the vehicle's glass, detectives persisted in considering Craig a viable suspect. In 1986, they opted to pursue charges against him, primarily relying on the informant's testimony. Tragically, Craig passed away just before the trial, succumbing to a drug overdose. Nonetheless, the prosecution possessed the informant's detailed account, including a rough sketch of the area where Linda's body was abandoned, which experts confirmed to be a close match to the actual location. Furthermore, Craig allegedly mentioned that Linda warned her captors about potential retaliation from someone named Rob, a nickname she frequently used for her spouse. The suspect also claimed to have consumed a cheese and vegetable sandwich belonging to Linda, a claim supported by the discovery of cheese residue in her purse after her vehicle was recovered. Despite the specificity of these details, they constituted circumstantial evidence and fell short of establishing guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Due to this reason, Craig was acquitted of Linda's murder. Investigators still maintain their belief in his involvement in the crime and have been attempting to gather additional evidence to secure a guilty verdict. However, their efforts have reached a dead end, causing the case to remain unresolved for many years. In 2014, detectives decided to reopen the investigation and reevaluate the existing evidence. They provided fingerprints from the van's glass to experts who utilized modern technology to reconstruct them. Upon successfully loading the data into the database, the police finally obtained a match. The fingerprints belonged to Troy James O'Meara, who was already serving a life sentence. A year and a half after Linda's death, he murdered a 22-year-old woman, and the details of the crime bore striking similarities. Despite this, James was never a suspect in Linda's case and was not on the police's radar. The detectives recalled that during the initial stages of the investigation, several witnesses reported seeing a fair-haired teenager in the shopping center's parking lot. Given that James was only 17 years old at the time, he matched the description. Despite this, the police sought to gather as much evidence as possible, leading to an unexpected turn of events. It was discovered that a DNA sample of the person who assaulted Linda had been stored at the warehouse all this time. Although it was no longer listed as evidence in the documents, the investigators stumbled upon it almost by chance. However, there was a problem. The sample was very small and had already begun to degrade, preventing local experts from extracting the perpetrator's profile from it. Subsequently, the investigators dispatched it to a state-of-the-art laboratory situated in New Zealand. The specialists successfully isolated the profile, which turned out to be an exact match to James's DNA. This meticulous process spanned several years for the investigators. Given that the perpetrator was already serving a life sentence, they were able to take their time and meticulously prepare the case for trial. Ultimately, James was apprehended on August 26, 2018, nearly 35 years after the heinous crime. At that juncture, the man was 51 years old. Having spent more than half his life behind bars, he had accumulated several additional charges during his incarceration. James had assaulted guards twice and even managed to escape from prison once, only to be recaptured the following day. Following his arrest for Linda's murder, he vehemently denied his culpability, prompting the commencement of trial preparations. The legal proceedings extended over several years, but in March 2021, the criminal opted to confess. He recounted seeing Linda in the parking lot where the young woman was seated in her car enjoying a sandwich. He entered her vehicle and coerced her to drive to a secluded area where he committed the heinous act. When questioned about his motives by the judge, James callously admitted that he simply desired to kill a random young woman that fateful day. Consequently, James was handed a 30-year prison sentence for Linda's murder, with the possibility of applying for early release soon due to his lengthy incarceration. Presently, he remains incarcerated, although the prospect of release in the coming years looms. Regrettably, Linda's father did not live to witness the apprehension of her killer. He had spent decades yearning to uncover the truth behind his daughter's fate, but succumbed to cancer after a protracted battle. Following his wife's demise, Robert vowed never to remarry, as his heart belonged to Linda eternally. During the trial, upon the pronouncement of the verdict, he expressed gratitude to the investigators and lamented that James had irrevocably robbed him of his family. As for Craig and the informant's narrative, the details remain shrouded in ambiguity. It is important to highlight that the individual providing information was a seasoned criminal and may have had ulterior motives for assisting in the resolution of the case. There is a possibility that the information provided to the authorities was not entirely truthful, and that crucial details about the case may have been obtained from media sources. Janice Pietropoula and Lynn Seathaler, two young best friends aged 19, were scheduled to return to their hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on June 30, 1973. However, when they failed to emerge from their rented cottage at Farrar's Motel by noon that Saturday, the hotel staff assumed they were simply sleeping in. The manager of the day shift decided to investigate and knocked on their door. Despite repeated attempts, there was no response. He made the decision to enter the room, using a spare key. What he found inside left him in a state of shock, a gruesome crime scene where both girls had been brutally murdered. The community of Virginia Beach was left in turmoil by this tragic event. Little did the investigators know at the time that it would take 50 years for this case to be solved. Was this a random act of violence, or were Janice and Lynn targeted by a serial killer? Virginia Beach, located in the state of Virginia, stands as an independent city. The current year of 2024 has seen the population soar to an impressive 463,000 residents. Despite this large number, crime rates in Virginia Beach have taken a significant dip. Shockingly, only one individual out of every 894 people falls victim to crime, making Virginia Beach a remarkable 29% safer than other regions in the United States. This city allures tourists throughout the year with its lively beach town ambience and thriving entertainment options. Those seeking an escape from the monotony of everyday life can find solace in this idyllic paradise, embracing the relaxed lifestyle often associated with coastal towns. A plethora of family-friendly attractions await, from kayaking and fishing to hiking adventures. For those who prefer lounging on the beach, Virginia Beach also captivates food enthusiasts with its diverse array of restaurants serving delectable cuisines. However, in the year 1973, Virginia Beach was shaken by a perplexing double homicide that left local authorities baffled: the tragic murders of Janice Pietropoulos and Lynn Seathaler. Janice Pietropoulos, born to Michael and Lucille Pietropoulos on March 11, 1954, grew up with her three siblings in Verona, Pittsburgh. Known for her gentle nature and ambitious spirit, Janice cherished her Volkswagen Beetle, a prized possession she acquired through part-time work during high school. After graduating from Penn Hills High School in 1972, she worked as an editorial assistant for a financial magazine, saving up for her college education. During her high school years, she formed a close bond with Lynn Seathaler, who coincidentally shared her birth date of March 11, 1954. Raised by Paul and Phyllis Seathaler in Penn Hills, Pittsburgh, Lynn was described as friendly, outgoing, and possessing a gentle demeanor. The two individuals graduated from Penn Hills High School in 1972 and commenced their careers as secretaries for the Urban Redevelopment Authority. Lynn, like her companion Janice, opted to work first before saving up for college. Despite this, both of them desired to savor their newfound adult lives by embarking on an adventure prior to fully immersing themselves in work and studies. In the summer of 1973, Janice, Lynn, and a few of their high school acquaintances decided to journey to Virginia Beach for a well-deserved break. Ultimately, Janice and Lynn embarked on the trip alone, as their friends withdrew due to other obligations. On June 24, 1973, they packed their belongings and flew from Pittsburgh to Virginia Beach. Over the next 5 days, both Janice and Lynn relished their time relaxing on the beach and exploring the attractions of Virginia Beach's oceanfront. During the evenings, they frequented local bars and restaurants with the friends they had made during the day. On multiple occasions, the motel staff observed the girls returning with male companions. Their comings and goings were not questioned, as they were two young women on vacation enjoying themselves. However, the conclusion of their holiday was swiftly approaching. On June 30th, 1973, both Janice and Lynn were scheduled to leave Virginia Beach and head back to Pittsburgh. When the day manager went to remind them of the checkout time, he had no idea he would be met with a gruesome scene. In the living room, he found the door jammed. Upon finally pushing it open, he was horrified to discover Janice's partially clothed body obstructing the doorway. It was evident that she had been murdered, given the significant amount of blood around her head and upper body. He called out for Lynn, who was in the adjacent room. Upon entering the second bedroom, he found Lynn had also been killed and left on the floor. Without delay, he rushed out to alert the authorities. The girls' highly anticipated holiday had concluded in tragedy. Upon the arrival of law enforcement, mere minutes after the distress call, they were met with a scene that could only be described as utterly chilling. The lifeless bodies of both girls lay on the floor, resembling discarded rag dolls. The room itself bore witness to a violent struggle, with Janice and Lynn's belongings scattered haphazardly. Their bodies, battered and bloodied, had met their tragic end with gunshot wounds to their heads. The bodies were swiftly taken for autopsy to ascertain the exact cause of death. As investigators delved deeper, a window screen discovered outside the cottage hinted at the killer's point of entry. The question lingered. Had the killer been lying in wait within the room, or had they slipped in while the girls slept? The motive behind the attack remained shrouded in mystery. Was it a random act of violence, or a meticulously planned crime? Dusting for fingerprints and collecting potential forensic evidence, investigators noted that the crime scene bore the hallmarks of a staged robbery. Oddly, nothing of value had been taken from the room, leading them to rule out robbery as a motive. The discovery of 3 fake identity cards hinted at a possible link to alcohol purchases. The third card, belonging to an unidentified girl, added another layer of intrigue. Bullets found at the scene were too damaged to determine the gun's caliber, but it was speculated to be a smaller caliber, possibly a pistol. The autopsy unveiled even more gruesome details. The girls had been murdered hours before their discovery, in the early hours of Saturday morning. Janice had endured a harrowing ordeal of strangulation, assault, and multiple gunshot wounds to the face. Lynn was not assaulted, but she endured being strangled, beaten, and a 4-inch slash across her neck before being shot twice in the face. A shattered wine glass was found in the room, stained with Lynn's blood. Forensic evidence was meticulously collected from the girls' fingernails and skin, securely stored for further analysis. The case left investigators puzzled, with more questions than answers. Who would target 2 young girls on vacation, and what could be the motive? Under the leadership of William Hayden, a distinguished captain at the Virginia Beach Police Department, the investigation commenced. Motel staff were interviewed about the events leading up to the tragedy. The night manager recalled seeing the girls returning between 11:30 p.m. and 1 a.m., appearing cheerful and unaccompanied. Further inquiries revealed that the girls had befriended several men during their stay and invited them to their rooms. Half of the police force in Virginia Beach was assigned the task of hunting down the person or persons responsible for the girls' death. They combed through rooftops, manholes, beach hangouts, and local bars in search of any suspicious individuals. A helicopter team was even called in to provide aerial surveillance, but unfortunately, their efforts did not bring them any closer to solving the case. Meanwhile, another team focused on interviewing multiple men who were acquainted with the girls during their stay at the motel. Each man provided solid alibis and willingly submitted to DNA testing. Despite a week of relentless detective work, the leads they followed ended in dead ends, and the hundreds of interviews conducted yielded no new information. Captain Richard C. Davis, head of the detective division in Virginia Beach, stated that several suspects had been ruled out, leaving them with no viable leads to pursue. As the investigation continued, the families of Janice and Lynn laid the girls to rest in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, on July 5, 1973. With a lack of progress, the case hit a standstill as the years went by. Advancements in DNA technology were still in progress, and investigators tested any forensic evidence they had collected. Unfortunately, the results were inconclusive. However, they did discover that the murder weapon used was a .22 caliber pistol. A glimmer of hope emerged a decade later, when Captain Hayden followed up on a lead that took him to Los Angeles in 1983 to investigate 2 potential suspects. Ultimately, it was revealed that these men were not involved in the murders. Investigators also explored the theory of a possible serial killer in the Virginia Beach area targeting Janice and Lynn. The sole connection that the investigators had to the ongoing case were the victims, who were of similar age to both Janice and Lynn. There were a total of 11 young, attractive, and Caucasian girls who had been tragically murdered. Despite the lack of distinguishing factors in the cases, this remained the most promising lead. The investigators were hopeful that by identifying the suspected serial killer, they would finally uncover the truth behind Janice and Lynn's murder. However, by 1988, the investigation had hit a standstill. The dossier at the Virginia Beach Police Department contained a staggering 1,300 pages of notes and investigation files, yet the case had gone cold over the years. Despite diligent efforts to follow up on leads and retest forensic evidence, the investigation yielded no results, and the file was once again put away. It wasn't until 2018 that the cold case finally saw a breakthrough. With advancements in DNA research, the investigators decided to utilize the new technology. After testing the forensic evidence recovered from Janice and Lynn's autopsies and uploading the DNA profile into the national database, they received a positive match. The Virginia Police Department sought assistance from various law enforcement agencies, including the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Naval Crime Investigation Service, and New York Police Department. Through their collaborative efforts, they were able to trace the DNA to a man who had lived in New York but had ties to Norfolk, Virginia in the 1970s. This man, Ernest Broadnax, was a military veteran. On April 8, 2019, authorities took into custody 81-year-old Ernest Broadnax. Nearly 5 decades had passed since the tragic murders of 2 teenagers, and now law enforcement claims to have finally apprehended the individual responsible. Ernest Broadnax, now 80 years old, was arrested by the New York City Police in connection to the cold case homicides. Allegedly, he is the one who took the lives of the 2 young girls who were residing in a beach house in Virginia Beach back in 1973. Ernest had been residing in an affordable housing community for veterans in Queens, New York. When the police arrived to detain him, Ernest reportedly nodded in acknowledgement and cooperated as they escorted him to the awaiting police vehicle. His neighbors described him as a friendly and helpful individual who preferred solitude. They were taken aback upon learning about his dark past. Not much information has been disclosed about Ernest's early years. Records indicate that he was born in 1938 and lived in Norfolk, Virginia. He had been married and divorced and had served in the military. Following an assault charge in the late 1960s, he was incarcerated. It remains unclear whether he left the military prior to his arrest or received a dishonorable discharge. In the 1970s, he was released and remarried, but the relationship ended due to his abusive behavior. Investigators suspect that shortly after his second divorce, Ernest committed the murders of Janice and Lynn. The motive behind the escalation of his criminal activities remains unknown. His whereabouts following the crimes were uncertain, but his extensive criminal record paints a different picture. With 14 prior arrests dating back to the 1990s, he was imprisoned in 2001 on 3 separate occasions for burglary and assault offenses. In 2013, he was released and has since maintained a low profile residing at the Veterans Housing in Queens, New York. According to a neighbor, Ernest once alluded to being involved in a serious crime that harmed someone, but he did not provide details. He also confessed to fellow residents in the apartment building that he had struggled with drug and alcohol addiction in the past, but had successfully recovered after undergoing rehabilitation. Following the apprehension of Ernest Broadnax, Virginia Beach Police Chief Jim Cervera briefed the media on the arrest process. Janice's brother, Michael Jr. Pietropola, shared the family's ordeal and expressed gratitude for the apprehension of a suspect. Lynn's friend, Valerie DeVere, informed reporters that initially the police suspected her of knowing the suspect. She was relieved to discover that she was not acquainted with him and was grateful to witness justice being served for her friend's murder. Janice's younger sister, Judy, recalled the day she learned of her sister's tragic death. Judy and her elder sister, Michelle, conveyed how Janice's murder had shattered their family and altered their lives forever. "A part of us all perished," remarked Michelle. For Police Captain William Hayden, who led the initial investigation, the case held personal significance for reasons he could not articulate. Ernest Broadnax remained in custody at a detention facility in Queens, New York, following his arrest. During his detention, investigators uncovered additional incriminating evidence from his residence. The specifics of the findings were not disclosed to the media or the public, as the case had not yet gone to trial. Investigators also needed to corroborate their DNA evidence and obtained a sample from Ernest. They also verified the viability of Janice's DNA sample for forensic analysis by collecting samples from her 3 siblings, which unequivocally matched hers, confirming that the original DNA sample remained intact and admissible as evidence in court. In August 2019, while awaiting a trial date, Ernest Broadnax was ordered by a judge to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. The evaluation revealed that he was suffering from dementia, making him unfit to stand trial due to his impaired memory, thinking, and social skills. Subsequently, the Attorney General's office filed a civil charge against Ernest, seeking to classify him as a violent predator likely to reoffend. This move would enable prosecutors to have him committed indefinitely to a psychiatric facility, even without facing a trial in the criminal case. Ernest was held at the Eastern State Hospital in Williamsburg, New York, where he was required to stay and receive treatment as the prosecution built their case. During his time at the facility, he underwent several assessments, sometimes being deemed competent and other times showing signs of severe dementia. The trial date was postponed until 2021 due to the pandemic. In late 2021, a court hearing was conducted to decide whether Ernest would proceed to trial. A Virginia Circuit Court judge determined that there was probable cause to proceed with a trial to assess whether Ernest was likely to engage in violent behavior at his advanced age. This decision followed testimonies from Virginia Beach cold case detective Christy Curtis, clinical psychologist Michelle Scholinder, and arguments from Ernest's attorney. Curtis recounted details from her interview with Ernest, where he mentioned working at Dick's Restaurant on the oceanfront in Virginia Beach in the early 1970s and recalled Janice and Lynn as peep show girls. Dr. Scholinder, who had evaluated Ernest's mental health and criminal history, testified that he posed a high risk of reoffending, exhibiting antisocial personality traits, and acting in his own interests. Ernest's lawyer advocated for him to be given a chance. The attorney highlighted that his client had refrained from criminal activities since being released in 2013 and had exhibited positive behavior. Nevertheless, the trial would not proceed. In October 2022, Ernest Broadnax passed away at the age of 84 after facing various health issues at the Eastern State Hospital. Following the news of Ernest Broadnax's passing, Michael Pietropola issued a written statement to the media. He conveyed his dissatisfaction with the case's outcome, but mentioned that they found solace in the belief that Ernest would be judged in death. The spokesperson for the Virginia Beach Commonwealth Attorney's Office responded to Michael's statement, sharing a similar sense of disappointment and frustration. She recognized that cases like this offer a glimpse into the minds of killers and can unsettle even the most resilient individuals.